Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the presentation, finally, of the so-called Hillsborough Law, more officially known, I believe, as the Public Office Accountability Bill. This legislation is designed to stop official, high or low, from covering up major scandals, particularly where lives are lost, and put in prison anyone who does so. It's been a long time coming and even overshot Starmer's intended timetable. So what will this legislation do? And as importantly, are the campaigners happy with it? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So this is the so-called Hillsborough Law unofficially, partly because it's been driven by Hillsborough campaigners for the best part of a decade, and partly because Hillsborough is the most famous case of the sort of injustice this legislation should avoid in future. It started with a football match, actually in my backyard of South Yorkshire, that resulted in the deaths of almost 100 Liverpool fans. Not only a tragedy which should not have happened, but the media and the government and the police all put the blame on grieving football fans rather than the incompetent policing. It took a lot of years before the truth came out that Thatcher's government deliberately ordered a cover-up of the real events in order to distract attention away from the authorities and blame innocent members of the public. But Hillsborough is not the only example of such a cover-up causing immense hurt to people. It's widely believed that without legislation like this to stop it, we're just going to get more and more cases like this. So this is not a case of locking the stable door after the horse has bolted. There's a lot more horses in there. Officials must not be coerced into covering things up. So the Public Office Accountability Bill aims to tackle the problem. The main feature is that it should force all officials, from ordinary plods all the way up to senior government ministers right at the top, to face a duty of candour with inquiries. No more colluding to warp the narrative. Lies will be specific criminal offences and can result in 2 years imprisonment. Now, this bill was promised in Labour's manifesto. It was supposed to have been introduced before the Hillsborough anniversary earlier this year. The government missed that deadline. Why? Because there were fears that the legislation might catch some civil servants in the net for minor bullshit. Lying about why you're late for work was one example cited. So the government felt more time was needed to make sure the legislation is only there to force honesty when some serious shit has gone down, not because you overslept and you're stupid enough to pretend you were stuck in traffic or something, right? Now, obviously, at the time, campaigners were wary. I mean, that sounded like an attempt to water down the legislation, doesn't it? Now, for my money, this legislation actually needs to meet 2 tests if it's going to work. The first is its stated operation. It has to make state organised cover-ups a thing of the past. The thing about a cover-up at this level is there actually needs to be a whole load of people to be complicit in it. It's about shifting the balance from fear of promotion prospects if you blab to fear of prison if you don't. So it has to meet that test. But the second thing it has to do is it has to achieve credibility. People have to feel that the legislation is actually protecting them. And the best people to ask about this are those who've been through the process, the victims of some of the very injustices that this legislation seeks to put a stop to. Do they believe, more specifically their lawyers, who will have a more expert eye, but do they believe that this legislation would have prevented their own injustices? Or do they think it's only paying lip service to the goals and will be toothless? Well, the good news is that the reports I've seen suggest that the campaigners, and I'll say more importantly the lawyers for the campaigners, feel that yes, this is the big step they wanted. They are still wary, of course. I mean, legislation can be amended. Indeed, the government intends to amend it, although to toughen it up, not weaken it. But people are right to be wary of amendments. This legislation applies to everyone, or it should, and some MPs may balk at the responsibility. For example, campaigners are saying that the bill only applies to certain inquiries. However, they also say that the government have told them that the legislation will be expanded to cover local authorities and combined authorities. So the legislation should stop both local and national government cover-ups in future. There also seems to be a promise to make sure the law covers other groups, ombudsmen, like health and safety executive, during those ombudsman investigations as well. But you can see how the potential for loopholes, intended or otherwise, is real. And campaigners will not be popping the champagne just yet, but carefully shepherding this bill through its passage in Parliament. And campaigners are going to be involved in the process as it passes through, so they should certainly have their say at committee stages, as well as creating specific criminal offences for not acting with honesty and integrity when something goes tits up and there's an inquiry. It also guarantees legal aid to bereaved families at inquests. Now, far too often, campaigners have to crowdfund their legal expenses. Ensuring that legal costs should not be a factor in the most serious cock-ups, i.e. those where lives are lost. That removes another barrier to justice. You know, that only those with funds can access legal redress when it comes to civil matters. In terms of the process, now by the time this video comes out, I think it should have been presented to Parliament. It's scheduled for today anyway. But Parliament is now going into recess for the conference season. But it does at least mean that when Keir Starmer goes to Liverpool for Labour's conference, he can say that it's out there. It would have probably been a very bad move if he had not done that. It's also a big boost that campaign groups are tentatively happy with the state of the bill, although, as I say, ain't over till it's over, which shouldn't be that long. The government seem to want to begin a new session of Parliament next spring. I think May is penciled in, and legislation can't carry over. So any legislation not passed by then just gets obliterated. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So the bill should be passed into law in literally the next 6 months, give or take. It just needs a very careful eye keeping on it to make sure that the law which eventually passes is fit for purpose. But I think I would say I'm reasonably confident, because what I would suggest is passing a law which wouldn't have prevented the cover-ups which led to this bill would actually end up making the government look far worse than if they just hadn't bothered in the first place. It really is a case of get it right or you'd have been better off not even trying. I would then fail both of the tests then. I wonder if, actually, a little side issue, if after MAGA are finally overthrown, whenever that is, America will see the wisdom in legislation like this. Because I keep looking at all those ICE officials wearing masks in public. They know they're up to no good. There's a reason they don't want identifying. Maybe some beefier legislation will be tempting on the other side of the Atlantic in future. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.